Alrighty, we're going to get started. Welcome, everybody. Tonight's topic is on confidence. My name is Dr. Sam Maniar, and I'm a sports psychologist. Just a couple housekeeping items. I cannot see you, so if you're making faces at me or anything, I won't see them. But Ryan Miller from OMP is going to be my eyes and ears tonight. And so if you have questions, please use the chat. He will relay them to me. We'll most likely save all the questions for the end. Um, and and just know that if you need anything, Ryan will be glad to help you. So away we go. A little bit about my background. So I've been a sports psychologist for nearly 25 years. I have worked with just about every level from high school to college to Olympic to professional. I've worked full time in the NFL. I've worked as a consultant in Major League Baseball, full time with the Alliance of American Football, worked with numerous colleges, high school club sports. I am a licensed psychologist and way too many years of school, but you can see all my alma maters there as well. Just a sampling of some of my clients that I have worked with currently or in the past, so you can see just a wide range from high school all the way on up to professional. So confidence, this is I found this image and I said, all right, that woman exudes confidence. This is kind of what we think of when we think about confidence, and this is what we want. Or if you're a coach, this is what we want our athletes to look like and feel like. So, what does confidence, other than that picture, what does confident look like? Well, over the course of a game or a match, probably something like this. Come in with some level of confidence. Maybe a bad play happens, confidence drops, maybe something good happens, confidence goes back up, something disastrous, or the coach yells at the player or gives them corrective feedback, confidence drops. And it's this up and down process throughout the course of a game or a match or a season or what have you. Now, what do we want it to look like? Something probably more like this. So, in today's presentation, I'm going to give you some tips on how to make it look more like the graph on the right and less like the graph on the left. So, before we get started, I think there's some prereqs here, and whether I'm talking about motivation, whether I'm talking about confidence, what I will say is I think it's really important that an athlete or a coach reflects on the good and the bad, because for me, it's like a chocolate chip cookie. Everybody has their own recipe. They might like it with lots of chocolate chips or fewer chocolate chips, or more ooey and gooey in the middle, or more hard or whatnot. And so everybody's going to have their own recipe, but there will be some commonalities as well. Obviously, to have a chocolate chip cookie, you need to have chocolate chips, you need to have butter, you need to have flour. So we'll all have some commonalities, but the amount of each or some of the specific ingredients might be different. You will see throughout my presentation, I do have some screenshots from the Optimize Mind Performance app, which if you haven't downloaded it yet, I highly recommend it. We're adding new content all the time. In fact, I'm about to get back into the studio soon to do some coach content as well as some soccer specific content. So look for that to drop soon. But let's talk about some prereqs. So I think it's important to start with identifying a time when you were confident. And if we're talking about sport here, preferably a sports example. So taking time to figure out what was the situation. How did your muscles or your body feel? What emotions were you feeling? What thoughts were going through your head? And then, I personally believe it's helpful to do this with writing. So, writing on paper, using the check in feature in the OMP app, using the notes section in your phone, whatever. But I think it's important to kind of write and reflect and look for themes across several highly confident practices or competitions. Now, what we don't like to think about, but as I'll get to later, I think we can learn a lot more from, are times when our confidence was low. So again, same questions, but now low confidence. Again, looking for themes. What we're looking for are what are the ingredients that will help me feel confident, and what are the ingredients that might make me lose my confidence. And then obviously we want to try to replicate as many of the good things and avoid as many of the bad things as we can. So I always, when I'm working with a client, by the way, confidence and performance anxiety, two most common things that an athlete seeks out when they're working with me. But this is where I always start, is some reflection on the good and the bad and what can we take from that. Once you've done that, we can get into the actual components of confidence. So I have it broken up like this. And I have preparation and past success here at the top, and then a dotted line. And the reason being is, for me, those are the two prerequisites. Those are the building blocks. And I'd argue they're the biggest sources of confidence. And once you have those two pieces, you can move on to the next section. Those are important, but potentially less magnitude. And then the be all end all that I think everybody aspires to is team confidence. And so I will briefly touch on all of these. Again, I'm happy to answer questions in this short amount of time. We're not going to be able to go too deep into any one thing. And that's why I have the screenshots up here. If you do have the OMP app, some of the things I'm talking about, many of the things I'm talking about, you will also find in the app. So, preparation. I like to use math as an example. And so imagine you're taking a math test and the last 3 exams you failed. It didn't seem to matter how you prepared, what you did to study. You just got an F every time. And so this time, you don't really study. You wait to the last possible minute. You kind of do a cursory review, and you've kind of already mailed it in. How confident are you going to feel in that situation? Probably not very. Now, if I were to say the last 3 exams you've gotten A's on and you've really figured out a process that works, you start studying a week before, you go over all of your homework assignments and redo anything that you missed, making sure you know how to do them. And if you don't, you go and meet with the professor and you get extra help. And then you make sure you go over the study guide and you get a good night's sleep the night before. How confident would you feel then? Probably very confident, at least more confident than the first situation. So to me, that is preparation and past success, right? Those are the two main factors that I talked about. In the one, the preparation, having a process that worked, getting a good night's sleep led to more confidence, or not having good preparation led to low confidence, and then having past success, whether past tests resulted in A's or F's, also affected confidence. So now let's apply that to sport. Why is preparation important for confidence? Well, I like to say that sports psychology it's rarely rocket science. So it's hard to feel confident if you haven't put in the preparation. Whether it's a math test, whether it's a basketball game, whether it is a golf match, whatever it is, if you haven't put in the work, it's going to be hard. It's going to be very difficult to feel confident. So it's important to make sure you're doing everything you can reasonably do. Now, what a professional athlete can do versus what a high school athlete can do, obviously very different. So reasonable is the word here, but that you're doing everything that you can reasonably do to prepare physically, technically, tactically, and mentally. Those are my 4 pillars of performance. So physical preparation might be things like strength training, rolling out for recovery, Normatec, eating well, hydrating, sleep, stretching. All of that would be physical prep. Technical prep would be things like drills, form, skill-related things. Tactical prep, typically that involves watching film of yourself, opponents, studying the playbook. Knowing how to play with a lead, knowing how to play from behind, looking at the weather and thinking about adjustments you might need to make. All that would be tactical preparation. And then mental preparation would be all the things to get your mind right. So that might be visualization, that might be relaxation, stress management, that could be concentration exercises, that could be a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today. So one important thing, we've got this, gremlin in our head that likes to tell us bad things and tell us how bad we are and so forth. And so even though an athlete might be prepared, that negative voice sometimes might tell them that they're not. And so I think it's very important that a coach reminds their athletes of all the preparation they've done and to remind them that they're ready to compete, or for an athlete to remind themselves. And this is one of many reasons why I think it's important to keep a log of for your training, a training log, because it's so easy to go back and flip through all the things that you've done to prepare. And that's a nice reminder and a nice way to prime the brain that, okay, I'm prepared. Okay, so that's step one of confidence, preparation. Step two is past success. So why? Well, success breeds success. How do you use this? Well, my favorite way is to watch a highlight video. Kids today all have them. And so it's a big part of the recruiting process, or they just, want to have a highlight video to put on social media or whatnot. But I think it's really important to watch a highlight video if you're struggling with your confidence before every practice, before every game, just to remind the brain that you've had success. If an athlete hasn't had success in a particular situation, then it's important to draw upon other relevant successes. And sometimes we need to connect the dots for our athletes. That could be success in practice. That could be success in similar situations, but different. Other sports could have been on the JV as opposed to the varsity. But any relevant successes that you can draw upon are helpful. So once you've done that, again, those are kind of the basics, but I wouldn't take them lightly. So where I always start, is the athlete sufficiently and within reason preparing physically, technically, tactically, and mentally? And have they built habits of past success that they can rely upon? If the answer is no, then obviously you need to work on those things. If the answer is yes, then let's continue. So goal setting. I know it's boring and so forth, but it is the most researched sports psychology topic and the most effective. So why does goal setting help with confidence? It helps to see progress on a day-to-day basis. Without those goals, it's hard to know that you're improving. The best metaphor I can give is when grandparents see their grandkids, what's the first thing out of their mouth every time? Oh my goodness, you've grown so much. And that's because they don't see them every day. But the kid is like, really? I hadn't noticed, because it's just so minute and incremental. And so that's where goal setting can come in. The goal setting on a daily basis can be like the grandparents. The other reason is there's a phenomenon called the winner effect. In fact, there's a book all about this if you're interested, and it originally came from studying chickens, roosters who would win the chicken fight, and that's where we get the term pecking order. But what they learned was, in studying chickens and then humans, is that the more successes that we're having, the more confident we're getting. And it actually results in changes in the brain. We release more testosterone. We find that athletes are more motivated. So if you find ways to build successes into training on a regular basis, your athletes will inherently, or yourself, you'll inherently be more confident. It's also a nice reminder just to look back at all the things we've accomplished. I have this image of a jar full of pennies, and that's one of my favorite ways to do this. Is every time a goal is accomplished, you drop a penny in there. If it's a team, I've done fish bowls with poker chips. And everybody sets a daily process oriented, something small, something day to day, not something arbitrary, something meaningful, that if they were to accomplish that, they're going to be one step closer to reaching their end of season goals. And if they do hit the goal, they drop the penny in the jar. And now, when I'm having a bad day, I have this visual of all of the goals I've accomplished this season. I have athletes that will keep it in their locker, and they'll use a plastic empty Gatorade bottle or something like that. And so it's just a nice visual. If you want to go back to kindergarten days and do gold stars on a calendar, that's completely fine too. Whatever works. If you want to write your goals on a piece of paper and drop the paper in there, get creative. But having a visual is very powerful. And it's important to track so that you can adjust either up or down. You can identify what got in the way. I think that's where a lot of people fail with goal setting. They set the goal and then that's it. But there's a lot to be learned from the process. So was it too easy? Was it too hard? What got in the way? How do I get around that next time? Once you've done that, growth mindset comes to mind. And again, you'll see there is a growth mindset short piece in the OMP app. So, I'd be shocked if you haven't heard of growth mindset in 2023. But first developed by psychologist Carol Dweck by studying children doing puzzles. And what she found was some of the kids wanted to come in and get challenged every week. They wanted to do more and more puzzles, harder and harder, even things that were beyond their abilities. And then some kids came in and they just wanted to do the exact same puzzle over and over and over again. And she discovered that you can have either a growth or a fixed mindset. Growth is where you are focused more on growth. That's why it's called growth mindset, or learning, development, and less on outcomes. Whereas the fixed mindset believes that you are born with your abilities and they can't be changed, whether that is running a mile or doing puzzles. And therefore, people with a fixed mindset do not want to be pushed or challenged, because if they fail, it means that they're just simply not good, or they're not smart, or they're not skilled. So why does having a growth mindset help with confidence? Well, here's the thing. If our brain could talk, it would tell you that it would rather learn from wins or successes. I don't necessarily want to equate successes with wins, so you choose your word there. And the reason is because there's less emotional baggage. However, if you can find a way to remove the emotion from the loss, those losses or those mistakes or those setbacks are far better teachers. And one of the best ways to do that is to have a growth mindset. Kobe Bryant was great at this. In his first, famous story, his first rookie season, he chucked up 5 straight air balls at the end of an elimination game in the playoffs, and the Lakers got knocked out. And rather than beat himself up, he took some time, separated the emotion, and realized that in high school he was playing 20 games a year. That was something, don't quote me on the number. I think it's 85th game of the year or something like that. And he realized that in order to be successful at the end of the season, his legs were going to have to be stronger and have more endurance, and he was going to have to train differently. And so because of that setback, it changed the way he trained, which changed the way he performed, and the rest is history. We know that people with growth mindsets, so again, focusing on learning and developing, will experience much less stress in competition, which in turn will help with confidence. So how do you do this? Well, there's an exercise in the app. I'll go over it briefly. This is the process. This is the habit you want to get into. I encourage people to do it on paper until it becomes automatic in your mind. But step one, you make a mistake. Everybody makes them, right? You Number two, you identify why the mistake happened. Number three, make an adjustment to prevent the mistake from occurring again. And number four, you move on. You let it go. You flush it. If as a coach or if as an athlete who is talking to themselves can help go through this process as opposed to adding emotion or judgment onto the mistake, the athlete is going to be experiencing far less pressure, more likely to have a growth mindset, and then as a result, have more confidence. Here's a chart that kind of shows the difference between a growth and a fixed mindset. And I think it really sums it up well. So if you have a growth mindset, your beliefs are that skills are built and you can learn and grow, whereas a fixed mindset believes that you're born with skills and you cannot learn and grow. People are just good or bad, or somewhere in between, but no improvement. The focus for growth mindset individuals is on the process and getting better, improving, whereas the focus for fixed mindset is on performance, outcomes, avoiding looking bad. The key ingredients to growth for a growth mindset, they find that training is useful, leads to growth. That embracing opportunities, they see that as as an opportunity to learn, get better. They certainly setbacks they use to learn, and then when given feedback, they appreciate it and use it. I have also coached as well as been a sports psychologist, and every now and then you have this athlete who actually thanks you when you're giving them feedback, and it's just so rare and a breath of fresh air. But if there's any coaches in attendance, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, and that's somebody with a growth mindset. If you haven't read Carol Dweck's book, there's a screenshot up there in the top right corner. It is an easy read. It's a cheap book. It applies to. She has some great examples on parenting and sports and business and relationships. And it's one of, when someone always asks me what's a book I should read, that's usually one of the first ones I recommend. Having an optimistic outlook and hope. So hope was a construct measured and studied by the psychologist Dr. Snyder at the University of Kansas. So why does this help with confidence? Well, confident people believe that things are going to turn out well. They expect to succeed. And what we've learned from studying brains is that the expectation to succeed is a mini version of actually succeeding. So when you start expecting to succeed and you think about succeeding, your brain starts to respond as though you've already succeeded. It's one of the reasons visualization is effective, and I'll talk about that momentarily. We also know that successful and therefore confident people are able to find multiple paths to a solution. So they don't get derailed by a setback. They simply find another way. They're also very goal driven. So how do you do this? Well, stay focused on your goals, in particular, your process goals, the hows as opposed to the whats. Number two, always look for other ways around a solution. Typically, there's more than one way. And then don't set artificial or arbitrary limits on performance. Everybody knows the 4-minute mile barrier story with Roger Bannister. Another one that you might not know is Herman Hollerith and punch card readers. I won't go into that today, but you can Google it. Fascinating what happens when people set arbitrary limits on performance. Positive self-talk. I love this graphic. It's instead of it's the I can't, changing it to the I can, right? So why? Well, our brain sends messages to our muscles to respond in line with our thoughts. And so if you're telling yourself you can't do something, your body will respond in a way to make sure that you can't do it. Like, I can't hit a drive straight on the golf course. Well, your body's going to, go inside out and you're going to slice the ball. So how do we change this? Well, try to reframe, try to find the positive or the silver lining. Try to say positive things in your head or out loud, whether those are affirmations. When negative thoughts creep in, try to flip those into positive ones. And this is hard to do in the moment. So it's important to do this in advance. Make a list of all of the potential negative thoughts that typically come into your head, and then what might be a response if that happens, so that you're prepared and you're ready and you're armed with that. Telling yourself simply to not think negative thoughts is rarely effective. So it's more effective to let it creep in and then flip it. Focus on controllables and or the process. Why? Well, when we're focusing on things out of our control, that's when we feel pressure. For me, that's the definition of pressure. Pressure happens when we try to control things we cannot control, like playing time, like outcomes, like statistics. Can't control those. The more we try to, the more pressure we're going to feel. So, how do you do this? Well, I love the exercise of writing out your fears, your worries, roadblocks, whatever words you want to use, and then putting them in two columns. One column is things in your control, one column is things out of your control. Tear the sheet in half, throw the out of control things away, and then for the things that are in your control, come up with a game plan. Don't stop there, but okay, that's in my control. What can I do to mitigate that? And then also, rather than focusing on outcomes, focus on the process. Redirect teammates, redirect yourself, redirect your athletes to focus on the process. How can I get the win as opposed to getting the win? Know your strengths. Why is this important? Knowing and focusing on your strengths it makes you feel more self-assured. It makes you feel more confident. Think about going into the gym. If you're lifting a muscle group that you enjoy and that's you're strong in, you're going to feel more confident. For me, that was always chest day. But when strength coach said it was leg day, oh man, I hated it. No confidence whatsoever. So, yeah, improving weaknesses can certainly help with your confidence, and you do need to do that. But dwelling on weaknesses is going to hurt your confidence. So, it's got to be a balance and probably more focused on utilizing strengths as opposed to improving weaknesses. How can I use my strengths to give me an advantage? So, leverage those. If you don't know what they are, ask a coach, ask a teammate. Find ways to leverage those. And then when all else fails, fake it till you make it. Why? Well, if you remember those conditions that we talked about at the beginning, your recipe, if you act as though you are experiencing those, again, mind body connection, but there's also a body mind connection. So if your body is carrying itself in a confident way, your brain is going to start to believe you're confident. So when all else fails, fake it till you make it. A quick note about team confidence, and then we can move on to some questions. So when we make a mistake in a team setting, the instinct is to blame the loss on somebody else, usually a teammate, sometimes a coach. Why? Because we're trying to protect our ego, especially if we have that fixed mindset. But think about the cost to team cohesion if people are blaming teammates. It's a cohesion killer, right? So collective confidence is even more powerful than individual confidence. But it's kind of like that unicorn that every coach is trying to get. How do you get there? Well, look, I know these are cliches, but and they're not. It's not easy, but it comes down to culture and team chemistry. there has to be a common purpose. There has to be alignment of values. There has to be trust. And I used to tell teams that you don't have to love each other. You just have to respect each other. I actually think that's wrong. I think teams that have true team chemistry do love each other, and they do enjoy hanging out with each other. They find ways to find similarities. And man, is this hard to do, but boy, if you think about all the successful teams across sports, these are the things they had. So before we jump into questions, so this wasn't just a waste of 30 minutes of your time. Take a moment, and I can't see you, so I don't know if you're actually doing this, but what's one thing you're going to do differently, more of, less of, change as a result of something that you heard today? Um, Put it in your reminders, set a goal for tomorrow, put it in your notes. If you have the OMP app, use the check-in feature. Makes no difference to me how you do it, but if you write it down, it's more likely to happen as opposed to in your head. If it's in your head, you can always convince yourself that it wasn't really a goal, it was just a wish, or it was just a thought. So take a moment, write down something that you're going to do, some takeaway, something. It doesn't have to be earth shattering, but just something, because you'll be more likely to do it. And then I am going to put my contact info up here real quickly. If you want to jot that down, I'm happy to give it to you again. And then we're going to jump right into questions. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can see the questions as they come in. Ryan just texted me and said he's going to jump on and read the questions. So I don't need to stop sharing my screen. So all right, Ryan, what do we have?
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Ryan Miller. I'm the head of content at Optimize Mind Performance. And one of the first comments that I've seen in the chat is from Adrian, who said, "This is great," and I could not agree more. Sam, thank you so much for your time this morning. This has been a great learning experience, I'm sure, for everyone who's on this webinar. One of the first questions of the day has come from Mitch, who has asked, how do you help clients interpret nerves that they might encounter when feeling a lack of confidence?
Yeah, so great question, because I think confidence and anxiety go hand in hand. So one of my, favorite ways is to just reframe the nerves. And if you think about the fight or flight response, sympathetic nervous system response, what happens when we are facing a fear or a threat? Well, our heart rate goes up, and I'll ask them, what happens when you are feeling anxious? And they'll tell me things like, oh, my heart rate's beating faster, I can feel it in my chest, my breathing gets faster, more shallow, maybe I perspire a little bit more. And then I say, all right, well, let's talk about something really exciting. You get to play in the national championship, you get a scholarship. And then I say, all right, let's go back through that list. Is your heart beating faster? Yes. How about your breathing? Is it faster and more shallow? Yep. Do you get butterflies in your stomach? Yep. Are you sweating a little bit more? Yeah, actually I am. And so we talk about that the physiological response to anxiety is the same as it is to excitement. And so I will sometimes have an athlete reframe when they're feeling those physiological responses, rather than, oh my goodness, I'm scared blank. Instead, I'm excited. If that doesn't work, then we talk about physiology and what's being secreted when we are getting stressed. So we've got a lot of hormones that actually will help with performance. That's why it's called a fight or flight response. It's going to make you faster or stronger. You're going to have things like testosterone, and we've seen people do superhuman things when they've had testosterone. You're getting more oxygen to your blood. That's why your heart's speeding up. That's why you're breathing faster. It's because we're trying to pump blood, which has oxygen in it. Those are all great things. So, all right, say to yourself, great. I've got more testosterone. I've got more oxygen. I'm ready to go. So that's one way. But I think one of the biggest mistakes is I think we have to get used to performing with some anxiety. And so training our athletes to perform in practice with some level of anxiety is important. Otherwise, you'll be like me. You're great on the driving range, and then you go play real golf, and all of a sudden it's a different swing. And so finding ways to put pressure on our athletes and obviously set them up to succeed, but finding those are two quick ways that I kind of help an athlete with anxiety as it relates to confidence.
Fantastic. Thanks again for that question, Mitch. I see you do have a second question there. We'll get back to that. We've just had quite a few more come through. We're going to move now to Rich, and Rich has asked, can these same principles be applied in a workplace setting for leadership, confidence, and performance?
For sure. So I do a bit of executive coaching because I've found that performance is performance. And so, and what I love is that sports are a great metaphor for, an executive or a business athlete, if you will. So absolutely, almost all sports psychology principles can be applied to business. Again, performance is performance. Performing artists, if you're doing a speech or poker player, whatever, confidence is confidence, and these same skills components will lead to more confidence, no doubt.
Great. Thank you so much for that question, Rich. And I can say, as someone who's been consuming all this content as we've been putting it up on the app, it's certainly helped me in various different ways from a corporate perspective. So if you are a coach or you're not an athlete, which I most certainly am not, it is definitely helpful to at least check out the app and have a look at some of the content that's available on there. We'll move to Adrian, who asks the question, how do you approach the conversation with athletes who say, my parents take away from my confidence?
Boy, is that common. Yeah. Anymore, my goal at any of my sporting events, and I hate to say I'm not always successful, but my goal is to say absolutely nothing. Um, Research shows that the most effective thing you can say to your kids after a sporting event is, I loved watching you play, um, and not to critique at all. So that's a challenge, no doubt. And parents need to hear this as well, not just coaches. So educating the parent if you can, it's tough. It's why when I was trying to find a specialty in psychology, I steered away from young kids because I was always concerned that if the system was broken, you couldn't really do a lot of change. And obviously that's not true, but that was kind of my belief at the time. And so it's hard. It is hard, no doubt. Educate, remind, role model, try to find ways to, include the parents in content, try to help the athlete articulate their concerns to their parents, but no easy solution there. Certainly confidence vampires at times.
Thank you so much, Adrian, for that question. We'll move on to Tom, who's asked, firstly, he said, thank you, Dr. Sam, for doing this. Going back to the idea of respecting each other and not having to be best friends, that's a concept that he talks about with his teams. How do you move a group towards that loving concept? I had a recruit talk about looking for a team that has a sibling relationship. Basically, love with the ability to push, prod, annoy, fight, but always be able to come back toward their love for each other.
Yeah. Boy, I mean, that sounds like the dream team, doesn't it? I don't have all the answers, but I will say helping teams find some common ground. Depending on the age, sometimes the gender, you're going to have to adjust your level of hokiness here. But, I had a coach once who she would pair people up every week and they had to have a coffee date. and they had to find 3 things in common and then come back and report that to the team. Now, would that work with an NBA basketball team? No, probably not, right? Would it work with a high school field hockey team? Yeah, I think it probably would. So things like that. But I think in order to get the players to buy in, you have to help them understand that the absence of that is what's hurting them. It's what's stopping them from getting to the next level. And how you do that, I think there's a lot of ways, whether that's bringing in people from teams who have done that or listening to a podcast. I was just listening to a podcast called Good Sport, where a basketball coach who played basketball at the University of Tennessee and then played in the WNBA and was never on a winning team in the WNBA, talked about how they had this love for one another and they still expected to win every single game that they showed up to. And so, listening to something like that, or, I'm sure the audience has other ideas as well. So, I wish I had the recipe and I could just lay it out there. And if it was that easy, we'd all do it. Right. But boy, is it worth trying.
Great question, Tom. Hugo asks, does trying to change negative thoughts into positive thoughts when playing result in a loss of focus on the task at hand?
So, yes, but dwelling on the negative will result in more of a loss of focus, right? So, yeah. So, one thing I didn't mention. So, any feedback, whether it's from a coach or a teammate or a parent screaming something from the sideline, takes away from an athlete's focus. And research varies on for how long, but I've seen up to a minute that they are not task focused. It can take up to a minute to recover from somebody giving them feedback. The same could be said about ourselves. If we're constantly dwelling on a negative, yes, we're not focused on the task at hand. And so, would the process of flipping a negative to a positive distract us from the task at hand? Yes. But assuming you're able to do that and flush it, um, and bring yourself back into the present, back into the moment, presumably you'd be task focused again. So, yeah, but not nearly as long as staying focused on
Thanks
the
for that,
negative.
Hugo. I think that's kind of answered one of Mitch's questions from before, but he does have one more, and I'll give this as the last opportunity for anyone who wants to get one more question in to put it in. We'll go to Mitch, and then I think Robin's just posted one as well. So Mitch's next question is there a difference in your mind regarding an athlete's training versus performance mindset?
I think it depends on how you set up training. I mean, I uh, I wouldn't want there to be. There probably is with many athletes, but I think we need to set up training and to incorporate more competition in training. Obviously, we want to help. We want to see our athletes succeed, and if they don't, we want to see them learn. So it all depends on how you set it up. But I think the more successful athletes do view training similarly to competition, whereas those who are less successful may view competition and training very differently. I just worked with an athlete on Monday who, should very easily get a Division I scholarship for their sport, and they told me they loved training but didn't have any fun in competition. I was just like, well, that explains why you're meeting with me, and it's not worth doing. All the pain that you put yourself through isn't worth doing, and so hopefully we'll be able to change their mindset on that. But so ideally, no, but likely yes. But I think that's a great goal to try to make them more equal.
Great. Thank you again, Mitch, for your questions today. Robin asks, do you see a difference in approach when building confidence playing a team sport versus an individual sport?
I mean, I think the components, great question, by the way. I think the components are very similar. Um, I do think, you know, clearly there's only one person to blame in an individual sport, right? So there's not the, I'm going to use air quotes, advantage, because it's not really an advantage, but of blaming somebody else. And so I think you do see a lot more individual athletes, individual sport athletes embrace sports psychology, embrace these types of things, seek it out more because of that. But I'd argue the components are the same. Um, and in reality, most individual sports have a team component to them. There's a team score, there's an effect of supporting and cheering on each other. Is it the same? No, obviously not. But the main difference is that collective confidence I alluded to at the very end and the team confidence. But in terms of building confidence, I think the components are very much the same. And again, my list may not be exhaustive. In fact, I know it's not exhaustive. You may have other components you would add to my formula. That's just kind of my starting point. But I'd say for the most part, confidence is
Great.
confidence.
Thank you so much for that question, Robin. I'll give everyone one last chance to ask a question. And while perhaps people are typing in their question, I'll ask you one, Sam. You NFL draft is tomorrow. You spent some time at the NFL Combine. I was just wondering. You obviously can't divulge exactly what some athletes said to you during the interviews that you conducted, but did you pick up any common threads from athletes in regards to confidence that either a lack of confidence that they suffered during their time in college, or ways that they find confidence? Is there any common thread that you found there, Sam?
Yeah, without sharing all my insider tips and secrets and how I get this information and so forth, but an athlete who's unable to tell you three growth areas, for example, you know, either they have a fixed mindset or they're not very coachable or they're trying to overdo the confidence, or if they can't give me a mistake they made and a way how they responded, numerous or athletes will tell me, I can't think of a mistake that I made, and I could tell you 20 that I made today alone. So for so those are some things I'm looking at: growth mindset. I'm looking at coachability. Is their confidence genuine or is it fake? Because obviously everybody's going to walk into the room. Well, not everybody, but most of them walk into the room carrying themselves with confidence. Not all, super sweaty palms and stumbling over words. Yeah, those are some concerns. Now, is an interview the same as a football game? No. So, I don't put a ton of stock in that unless there are multiple common themes saying the same thing. But those are some things. I'm looking at their mindset and how they respond and how they view setbacks and failure and improvement and those
Right.
sorts
I
of things.
think that's it for questions for you, Sam. Thank you so much for your presentation today. Everyone, thank you for joining us as well and for your questions in the chat. Don't forget to download the Optimize Mind Performance app to check out more of Sam's content, especially on confidence and motivation. He also has a football specific series that you can check out. The best way to download it is to search Optimize Mind Performance in either the App Store or Google Play, or you can head to optimizemindperformance.com/download, and you can find the links to the app there. Sam, thank you so much for everything this morning, and we'll look forward to seeing hopefully some of the players that you've interviewed get drafted at the NFL draft.
Sounds good. And then one last plug for the app. If you have a club or a team or a larger group that you'd be interested, just reach out to just go to the Optimize Mind Performance website and reach out. And there's some group pricing that they can make available to you.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today.